Meat in the freezer. So happy for my lunch.
It's so stupid. I think it might work.
Chaos? Like every hunting season.
Seems like it's not going anywhere, but it also seems like it could go somewhere.
You lost his favorite bag, I swear. I would not. I'm actually pretty good direction.
And then we check the old YouTube to see.
Is it ready to rock?
Sometimes it's quick. It's quick. Look at that. What's going on with the Knowles-Nelson Stewardship Program? That's us.
Hey.
There we are. Okay, let's hit the buttons.
This is the Okayest Hunter podcast. Never pass on shooter bucks, because that's just meat in the freezer. It's your tag. You hunt how you want. This is Okayest Hunter.
Here we go.
It just ends. I love that. Welcome to the Okayest Hunter podcast. We had a really enjoyable episode last week, and
We did.
I think we're going to have a really informative episode this week. If you're on social media, like a lot of us are, we are in Wisconsin, Oconomowoc, Wisconsin, to be specific, through one of our I don't know if I can call them a partner, but we donate to them. So we're close with them, just in general, very aware of their happenings. But the Waukesha County Land Conservancy had been posting about the Knowles-Nelson Stewardship Program, as well as I've just been seeing it literally everywhere.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people have been posting, and the BHA fellows have been sharing out information, and I think we've all seen it. Been like, what's going on here?
I've been wondering. I'm just too busy to I'm like, something's happening here.
Wait, you're busy?
I should probably pay attention. We all are. And so this episode stands to try to maybe answer some of the general concerns and questions we may have about it as a population. To just get these. So we have a guest we're going to bring on in just a minute. But before we do that, I did want to say we're brought to you by Nosler. and because the partners we have, by the way, those partnership dollars are what flow into our donations towards conservation. So it's kind of it's very important to us that we have a hand in that. And whether that's volunteering or donating money, where I can't donate time, I donate money. Depends. Like my membership to the Horicon Marsh Archers is strictly financial, because I don't have any time to get out there to help with any of the volunteering. And I think they're okay with that, because I just keep writing the checks.
Money too. They need money.
Yeah. So we're going to dive into that. Shout out to Gerber. We're going to be doing some fun stuff with those guys, with some giveaways coming up right around the bend, as well as some in-person stuff here come springtime. So more to come on that. We're just trying to iron out some of those plans at the moment, but very excited for how they've really just kind of locked arms with us on some things to do some really fun stuff with everybody.
They have been very willing to supply some great products for giveaways for us in the last year. Holy cow.
Absolutely. Yeah. Latitude, those guys have been crushing it. I don't know if you're in the market for a new pack, but they have a few different ones. You can see those on our YouTube videos. You can see it on their socials and so forth. Rat Cub, we just did a collab with them on social. It's shed season, baby.
Let's go.
Never a better time to look into Rat Cub at the moment. And Bear Archery, another great partner of ours, who has done a really good job of outfitting our listeners with their bows. So and us as well. So just good stuff all around. And big announcement. I think I can't formally officially say it, but we may have finally honed in on a new home, and
Fingers crossed.
I'm super excited about it. And when we learn more and can talk about it more, we will share the information and updates with you. But I think we're gonna be able to come in for a smooth landing.
Your basement we might not have to revisit your basement, which will make your wife and your family very happy that we don't have to drag everybody back down.
Yes. And the space we do end up with, if it's the one, so much opportunity for fun stuff with
That's
everybody.
great.
So
Very
really
cool.
eager to bring that to life for our community here in Wisconsin. So not to alienate people that aren't here, but we hope it becomes a bit of a destination, honestly. If you want to come hang out with us, we'd be really happy to have people and host them.
Great place to do all sorts of fun stuff in there.
Yeah, lots of room for activities.
I'm already picturing how we can get a tree in there and lock it in for shooting out of the saddle.
I already have someone working on that, by the way.
Oh, sweet.
Yeah, there's plans.
Come on.
That was in works for this one, but it got punted a little bit. And
this
then
one's
obviously,
got high ceilings.
but this one we could do even
we
more.
can get a 12-foot platform up there.
We're going to be shooting out of our Latitude saddles from
Let's
a telephone
go.
pole inside a building. not dangerous at all. It's total. We're gonna have a good insurance policy. It's gonna be
Yes.
great. We've come a long way. It's pretty cool. I'm excited for us. So let's bring our guest on, Charlie Carlin. Hopefully, Charlie, I say your last name correctly because I didn't ask ahead of time. My bad.
You're correct.
Nice. And you're with Gathering Waters and Team Knowles-Nelson. Why don't you take a moment to introduce yourself so our audience kind of understands your credibility on the topic we're going to break into today?
Great. Yeah, good to be here with you guys tonight. So I work for this organization called Gathering Waters, and we are Wisconsin's Alliance for Land Trusts. So you mentioned Waukesha County Land Conservancy. There are 40 plus nonprofits all dedicated to land conservation across Wisconsin. And it's our job to make their lives easier. So we're their voice in the Capitol. We provide technical services like legal support, GIS, things like that. And we help conservation get done in Wisconsin. So Wisconsin's land trusts have protected something like 500,000 acres all over the state. It's a really impressive impact. And then we coordinate what we call Team Knowles-Nelson. So we're going to talk a lot about the Knowles-Nelson Stewardship Program tonight. Really briefly, if there is a cool place outside that you hunt, that you take your kids to play, that you go ride your bike, chances are the Knowles-Nelson Stewardship Program helped to make it happen. And it is the state funding that land trusts use to help acquire land. So we advocate for that in the Capitol, and Team Knowles-Nelson is a coalition of about 80 different organizations and thousands of individuals all over the state that really want to see this program continue to be successful because they care all about the places outside that just make Wisconsin what it is.
Before we get too deep into what is going on and exactly how the Knowles-Nelson Stewardship Fund works, let's just say thank you for doing what you do, and your coworkers, the people all across the state who have given us this opportunity, because we all enjoy the public lands and hope that our kids can enjoy them forever. So thank you for doing the job that you're doing and doing such a good job at it, and being willing to come on tonight to talk about this concern that we all have.
I deeply echo that as well. To piggyback off of Derek, like I've taken my kid to properties I know were acquired through this program, and more properties I've hunted on, which is really cool because then I bring my kids sometimes hunting, sometimes pull trail cameras, sometimes to go morel mushroom hunting, or just collect ticks.
Tick collection.
But yeah, either way, it's vast and it's fun and it's exciting, and for us to have that legacy to bring our kids out. If we don't have that, it's I don't know. I'd let you elaborate more. I guess I don't know what I don't know. And so I'm hopeful that our audience watching our live stream will have some commentary and questions that come through to help kind of facilitate a little bit of this conversation, kind of like getting some input from the public, but also hearing your take on this, the history of the program, what it's done, so to speak, and kind of the state of the union now, and then what is the action we can take around that. That's kind of how I think we can break this down.
Yeah, I think that makes a ton of sense. And if I can upset that cart just a little bit, let's start briefly at the end and say our state legislature is about to completely zero out funding for this program. So if they don't get their act together, we're going to hit this summer and have essentially $0 for land conservation, for taking care of trout streams, or building any of that outdoor recreation infrastructure, bike paths, park shelters, campgrounds, things like that. So that's why we're talking about it, because we're in this sort of critical moment, right? So
I'm really glad that you said that, because
what is the time frame on that, by the way?
Yeah, the other day when this kind of breaking news was happening, I had shared, I think it was on just like on my Instagram story, the tombstone. Yeah, Rip Knowles-Nelson. Yeah. And I had shared that out, and I had immediately that day gotten multiple messages from people saying, what does this mean? Like, what is this about? So I'm glad that you just started like, hey, here's what we're about to potentially have an issue losing. Let's dive into like how it started and what's going on. So thank you.
Yeah. So, okay, let's go back to the beginning, right? Back in 1989, Democratic legislators and Republican Governor Tommy Thompson worked together to craft what we call the Knowles-Nelson Stewardship Program. And their idea was, let's invest state money in acquiring lands for outdoor recreation and to protect areas that are environmentally sensitive. And then let's build the stuff that we need to so that people can get out there and enjoy it. And Knowles-Nelson is the predecessor to way back in the 1960s. We had something called ORAP, the Outdoor Recreation Access Program. It was funded with a tax on cigarettes. And so as that program was winding down, we moved into Knowles-Nelson. And it has been a wild success story. So there have been more than 10,000 investments made in every single county in Wisconsin for buying land for hunting and fishing, for county parks, neighborhood parks, buying land for trails. So if you walk on the Ice Age Trail, you ride the Hank Aaron Trail around Milwaukee, or the Cap City Trail in Madison, where I am, Knowles-Nelson is paying for that. If you're an angler and you launch your boat somewhere, anywhere where there's a boat ramp, there's a parking lot, maybe there's a place for you to pee before you get in the water, all of that is Knowles-Nelson investments. And so we crunched the numbers on this a couple of years ago, and we found that 90% of Wisconsin houses are within a mile of a Knowles-Nelson project. So that's how well spread out all this stuff is around the state.
So when you say funded by Knowles-Nelson, can you help me understand under what like appropriation or funding? Because when I considered I'm trying to make this very nucleus for my own selfish understanding, and hopefully you can find a way to expand upon that. But if Waukesha County Land Conservancy is acquiring properties that they're allowing recreation on and/or hunting and so forth, the dollars they get to do that from, maybe people that are donating to them just outright and they have a lot of donations coming in, or is it through grants that they obtain through Knowles-Nelson? I don't know what I don't know, and I'm eager to hear an explanation of like how this actually functions and what's being taken away here.
Yeah, great question. So we can start real general, and then I'll drag you through the weeds a little bit. So big picture, the way this works is it's a competitive grant process, and the grants made are matching grants. So if you're the Waukesha County Land Conservancy, the Door County Land Trust, the Nature Conservancy, folks like that, and you say, we've got a really cool project. We want to go add 100 acres to this preserve. It's going to be open to the public. People can go hunt, fish, trap, take their kids out and screw around. They can apply to the state of Wisconsin through the Department of Natural Resources, and they say exactly that. We've got this really great project. Let me tell you about this piece of land, why it has important conservation values, how we're going to give public access to it. And then if the state agrees and they say, yeah, this is one of the best projects that we're considering this year, they'll cut a check for up to about half of the cost of buying the land. And so then your Waukesha County Land Conservancy, they turn around, they go to generous donors like you all, people who care about it, and they do a fundraising campaign. And they say, help us match that grant. And so usually that other 50% comes from just people like you and me, giving money. Sometimes it's foundations. And sometimes it'll be, occasionally it might be like a federal grant that could also help. There's federal money for protecting wetlands or protecting working forests, things like that. So, okay, that's the grant process. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, thank you. It does.
Yeah.
And I'm really glad that you were able, this is why I'm glad you're here. And because like if I had to navigate this conversation on my own, I'd step in dog poop.
Well,
a
I
lot.
think we've all kind of wondered at some point, like, hey, this land I'm stepping onto, how in the heck did it become public when it wasn't always? And it's great to hear the backstory and how the funding process works.
Well, and just my general thought process is like, there's no more land. Like it's a finite resource. And so the ability for our different NGOs to go acquire private land to then make for public access feels like that's the best thing we could have in our state. Like who is opposed to that?
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, maybe there are people that aren't. I don't know what the devil's advocate argument is of that, but I'm just like, as an outdoorsman, recreational and hunting, like I want more access to more land opportunities. And I know there's other orgs out there that are for profit, like, the day lease companies that exist. There should be a lot of tools in our tool belt for ways to go access land to do stuff. Otherwise, we turn into another country that doesn't exist. Like, you just can't go do it. Or Texas, where it's pay to play.
Yeah, I think that pay to play thing is really important, right? So all of this is, we use public money doubled with private money to create a public good, right? It is land that we can all get out there and access. Doesn't matter how much money you make. It doesn't matter where you live. It's just something that we can all really have in common. And I should say, this happens on lots of different kinds of ownership of land. So sometimes it's straight up public land, right? You go and you hunt on a state forest, or Wisconsin's really cool because we've got like 3 million acres in county forest land. And then you have your Waukesha County Land Conservancies, folks like that, where you have nonprofit organizations owning land so people can get out. But then we buy permission to use people's public land as well. So take trout streams, for example, right? These things meander for miles and miles and miles. Most of it is going through farmland, and it's somebody's back 40. We don't need to buy up the whole farm, but what is really helpful is if we can protect that stream corridor. So we can re-meander that stream, we can make sure that the water quality is good, and we can make sure that folks have permission to walk from the road to the stream bank and go fishing. And that's a whole sub-program within Knowles-Nelson, is just buying what are called those stream bank easements, which is essentially permission to get out there and go fish.
I've fished those easements through guided fishing for trout in the driftless area. Last year, our whole crew did a turkey camp, but we also fished because turkey hunting out in the driftless is difficult, apparently. Because we were like, oh, look at all this public land. Oh, wait, a lot of it's actually for probably just accessing these streams, which we're like, we should fish these streams.
We do, yeah. So, we made it work.
So we did that, and it worked out pretty well. We caught a number of trout. It was really cool. In fact, your son caught a huge trout.
Yeah, that was really fun. He still talks about that one.
I would too.
But I mean, we think of the driftless as a beautiful area to fly fish, but there are stream bank easement properties all over the place. And what I've noticed in the last 10 years is the number of them has seemed to gone up and up and up and up and up. Like I look all the time because like I love public land and I love scouring the maps, but I've seen more and more of those stream bank easements and like around places that you just couldn't access to fish. And so many of them are on the eastern side of the state or in the northeastern part of the state where I grew up trout fishing. It can be really, really difficult to wade fish a lot of those. So like the whole Wisconsin law, as long as you're in the water, like you can go through, but there's so many alders coming out, like it can be really hard to access that
really
way.
Deep spots.
So those stream bank easement properties, like that whole funding system works so good to make it that much better and easier and spread people out to strips of the river that they would have never been able to fish if it was wade fishing or whatever. Mm-hmm. So it's hugely important.
Yeah. And it's just like being able to provide all kinds of access like that in lots of different ways, right? Because there are some parts of the state where we still have really good opportunities to expand public land. So take northern Wisconsin, for example. Starting in like 1990, all the paper companies that used to own all of that land, they sold it off. And most of that land is now owned by Wall Street. It's hedge funds, it's investors. They buy it, they hold on to it for like a decade. They cut what they can, they chop off the lake lots, they turn around and sell it again. And so you can see where this goes, right? Land ownership, it becomes a checkerboard. You start to lose access, you lose habitat connectivity, herds can't move as well. And so we can get up there, protect that land, even just with an easement. Like we were talking about with stream banks, you can do the same thing for a forest. So for pennies on the dollar, you can say, public has access to this land. You can't chop it up into individual lots, but otherwise you do you. Run your forestry business, cut down the trees as you need to make money, but we're going to provide that public access for folks. But then you get into southeast Wisconsin, right, where a lot more population density. Most of that land has been in private ownership for a really long time. And that's where some of this kind of just permission to get out there and hunt works a lot better.
God, I'm learning a lot.
This is great. This is excellent episode so far. Thank you,
This program,
Carlin.
it's been around since 1989, and you said, like in the beginning, it's a wildly successful story overall, especially considering, like you said, 90% of homes in the state are within, what you said was approximately like within a mile or
Within
something.
a mile, yeah.
That's crazy. And so I guess what's going on right now with this? Like, what do we stand to lose, and what can we do, if anything, and how do we go about doing that? Is it like a pick up the phone situation? I know I've just asked 3 questions. This is what I do. So just take them one at a time. But
You got it. And what I do is I just talk. So I'm going to start talking, and then you interrupt me when there's when you think you need to. So yeah, Knowles-Nelson has been and continues to be this wildly popular program. There is no controversy among Wisconsin voters about whether we should continue to do this. So we partner with the Nature Conservancy every couple of years and do polling. And what those polls show is that more than 9 out of 10 people say, yes, the state should invest public money in land and water conservation and outdoor recreation. And that doesn't matter if you're a Democrat, Republican, Independent, doesn't matter if you live in Madison or Rhinelander. That support is just super strong all across the state. And people say it's because they want their kids to grow up in a place that's better than they did. They want to be able to take their grandkids hunting just like they did. And people are concerned about losing habitat. They're concerned about climate change, and they say, we got to do this. So everywhere except the Wisconsin Capitol building, this program is a total slam dunk. It's also cheap. So we run the numbers on it. The way the program is funded right now, it costs every Wisconsinite $11 a year. So you can barely eat at Culver's for $11, right? And that provides all of those amenities for the year. Things fall apart once you get inside the Capitol. So every so often, the legislature has to renew funding for the program. This used to be a once a decade thing, and that has really broken down. And so now we're arguing about the program every 2 years or every 4 years. So funding is set to expire this summer. That means in the 2025 state budget, we had to renew funding for the program. Governor Evers, he's a big champion for the stewardship program. What he said is, not only should we renew it, let's triple the funding for the program. This is worth it, and let's invest. So he said, let's put $100 million a year into the stewardship program, and let's supercharge what we're doing. Republicans control both houses of the legislature, and they said no, just full stop. They refused to include any funding for it in the state budget. And there were some Republican legislators working on this really earnestly, and they said, don't worry, we'll come back later this summer or this fall. We'll do it as its own piece of legislation. So they came back, and what they proposed was really Knowles-Nelson in name only. They said, sure, we'll do the facilities maintenance side of it. So if you want to take care of bathrooms, that's fine, but we're not going to include any money at all for buying up land or buying those easements, that permission to get out there and hunt and fish and screw around.
To interject real quick on that point, and please put a bookmark where you're going. What is I think in terms of business, what is the total addressable market in terms of, like, how much more opportunity is there to use up that 100 million to go acquire easements, property, so forth? Like, we're talking about it's successful, let's supercharge it. I'm assuming it's pretty wide open if that's what we're talking about financially. I don't expect you to have a total addressable market on what we could go acquire, but I'm assuming the appetite is there for it, or like the food is there for the appetite.
Oh yeah, for sure. So like, here's one little tidbit. A few years ago, Onyx, they did a GIS study to say how much public land is like totally inaccessible. It's landlocked and surrounded by private land. And what they found just in Wisconsin, we've got multiple tens of thousands of acres of public land that nobody can get to because it's totally surrounded by private land that isn't open to any of us. So, I think that's like a real easy example to say, hey, there's some work to be done here, and we could get out and really expand public access.
That's good to know. And there's a property like that right down the road for me that I'm like, God, I want to get on there. And there's just no way to. And I'm sure that there's a lot of door knockers and a lot of pissed off people that say, stop knocking at my door. You're not getting through. So I've heard.
Oh, for sure. Or you consider like the Ice Age Trail, right? So really cool project to make this footpath traveling all across the state of Wisconsin. There's more than 500 miles of that trail left to acquire. And so if you don't want to have to walk on a highway for a big chunk of your hike across Wisconsin, you want the stewardship program to keep working so that it can go, buy even those strips of trail, right? So that you're walking through the forest and not on some county highway.
And so I'm thinking, what's at stake that people don't want us buying up more of these easements and these tracts of property? Like, why not? Why cut the funding? What is there a deeper reason that I'm not aware of? Or is it just like, no, we're just saying no because? Is it really that petty?
So there's a few different reasons here. So, let's start with maybe kind of the most generous ones or the most reasonable. Sometimes what you'll hear a legislator say is too much public land starves a local government of needed revenue, because if the state owns the land or a nonprofit owns the land, they're not paying property taxes. And local governments, they use property taxes to fund, schools, EMS, roads, things like that. It's a bit of a red herring or like a false argument, right? Because first off, if it's public land, there's a thing called payments in lieu of taxes. And what that means is the state says, hey, we know you're not collecting taxes on the land that we own, so here's a per acre fee that we're going to give you to help cover it. It is also true that large blocks of public land are way cheaper to manage than a whole bunch of individual 40s in some forest. So say you've got a block of 10,000 acres of forest land, and all you have in there are forest roads that loggers are using to get back there and work, and that hunters are using to get out there for access. Every once in a while, you got to go out and grade those roads. That's about the extent of the services you have to provide. Now, say you chop it up and you sell it off, and you've got your hunting cabin, I've got my hunting cabin, we each own 50 or 100 acres or something like that. Now, I've got a lot more traffic going in and out of there, so the road maintenance is higher. I got to run power out there. I got to do trash pickup. Somebody's going to have a heart attack and I got to get an ambulance out there. It becomes way more expensive for a local government to service all that land. So the DNR, they've done a ton of research on this, and what they found is that it's actually cheaper to keep those big blocks of undeveloped land. And then, of course, this is why people go to the North Woods. This is why people go to the Kettle Moraine, is to get out there and enjoy all those wild places. So then you get the outdoor recreation economic boom, right? People come, they buy gas, they buy snacks, they stay in a hotel, they go to the tavern after they're hunting, and that's what supports these local economies. So, that's probably the most reasonable argument that folks make. Sometimes you've got folks like, a Mike Lee from Utah. You mentioned him earlier before we got on the show, right? Who just say, we shouldn't have public land. Like, let's sell it off to developers. And there is a whole strain of politician and activist that's kind of on that wackadoodle side that says we should just sell off all of our public land. And it would be much better if we were mining it or if we were putting up housing developments or things like that. That's what you might call sort of like your ideological argument.
Yeah, let's just piss away our quality of life. Sounds good. Yeah,
yeah, exactly, right? And then you've got the argument that falls into the really petty argument. So, okay, why is Knowles-Nelson controversial at the state capitol? So bear with me for just a sec here.
Well, this is good. I think you mentioned before you hit record. So go on. You're good to go.
Yeah. There used to be a law on the books that allowed this really powerful legislative committee, it's called the Joint Finance Committee, to review any Knowles-Nelson project that was going to be more than $250,000. Real estate is expensive, right? Just about any time you start buying land, you're paying more than 250 grand for it. So after somebody goes through the whole application process, the experts at the DNR review it, and they say, yeah, this is a worthwhile project, that legislative committee could have one last look to say thumbs up or thumbs down. But they weren't content with having that thumbs up or thumbs down. What they did is they wrote a law for themselves that said a single anonymous member of that committee could block any project that came before them for any reason or no reason at all. And the person who blocked it never had to say their name. They never had to say why. They never had to have a public discussion about why the grant was being blocked. And the committee never had to hold a vote. So even if, I think it's a 16-person committee, even if 15 people on the committee said, hey, we should do this, it's a good idea. If there was one stick in the mud, the project was dead. So if that sounds bonkers, it is. And everybody else thought it was bonkers too. So eventually the Wisconsin Supreme Court took a look at it and they said, this is totally unconstitutional. There's a justice on the Supreme Court. Her name is Rebecca Bradley. She is by far the most conservative member of the court. She wrote the opinion that said, y'all can't do this. That's not democracy. So that law is gone. Legislators still have a ton of power here, right? They write all the laws. They can structure the program any way that they want. But there's a group of lawmakers, and unfortunately they're all Republican lawmakers, who said, well, we took one on the chin there, losing that court battle. Now we can't block these projects anonymously. So we're just going to kill the whole program. And I was in a Senate committee hearing a couple of weeks ago, and lawmakers said it really specifically, that that is why they don't want to fund the program, is this, they want to get back for losing this court case. And all the rest of us that just want to get outside, take our kids out, go camping, we're going to suffer because of some really petty argument up in the Capitol.
And you're at the Capitol, you're lobbying, you're having these conversations with lawmakers. Describe what that is like for you and how seriously these people maybe take those conversations with you. Like, what does that feel like in your shoes? What's the day? What's the day in the life for a hot minute up at the Capitol?
So, by and large, it's pretty good because this is such a popular program. Nobody chooses to live in Wisconsin, because of our huge metropolitan areas, right? Like, we're here because Wisconsin is super beautiful. There are all of these places to get outside. It is our heritage. So a lot of my job is I take legislators out and I take them for a hike or I take them for a bike ride. And I say, this place in your backyard, this was funded by Knowles-Nelson. And they say, I had no idea. Awesome. I'm on your side.
It feels like,
and then I go up.
You're just like, I could just see the jump cuts of the commercial. Like, did you know this was funded by Knowles? And then next thing you're in a trout stream. Did you know that this was?
But it is.
Your market is taking this and it's going to run.
It just does feel like
Let's
a 30-second
help
ad spot where you're just overly obnoxious. Like, and then they start doing, it was funded by, and you're like, no, actually, this one wasn't.
I had a really good, there's a assembly representative. Her name is Jessie Rodriguez, and she represents part of Milwaukee. And she and I had a conversation a few years ago, and we started talking about Knowles-Nelson. And she said, like, I hear about it. People in my district, they go up north and they go hunting, and I kind of get it. It's important to hunters. And I was like, well, let's take a look at what Knowles-Nelson does right in your district. And the place where she goes walking every morning with friends, it's a local park. It was funded with Knowles-Nelson dollars, and the walking path was paved with Knowles-Nelson dollars. And it was exactly that commercial, right? So, that story, it's really easy to tell. And then it depends on who I'm talking to when I'm at the Capitol. So I mentioned the governor. We got him to a really good place. He put this really strong proposal in his budget. After it didn't make it through the budget, Democrats said, okay, let's craft a compromise proposal. And so they put together a bill that they thought was sort of meeting in the middle. And Senator Jody Habush-Sinekin, she's not too far from you all. She represents like Port Washington area. She wrote it. And then her co-author was a gentleman, Vinnie Moresi. He's from Stevens Point. And they did a lot of the legwork with all the Democratic legislators. There's 60 of them in the Capitol. All 60 of those legislators signed on as co-sponsors to their bill. That means they gave their thumbs up. They said, yeah, let's do this. And then conversations get a lot more challenging on the Republican side. And they go one of a few different ways. Sometimes they go, yeah, like this is a good idea. Let's do this. I'm supportive. Last summer, I took Senator Rachel Cabral Guevara out for a tour around the Appleton area. She represents a whole bunch of the Fox Valley, and she lives right on the water there. And she said, yeah, my kids, they go play on this island that was acquired with Knowles-Nelson dollars. We kayak through the wetlands. Some of that wetlands work is Knowles-Nelson dollars. She was like, great, thumbs up. But then, sometimes I get into a committee hearing and there's somebody like Senator Rob Staffschul. He represents Western Wisconsin. Guy's a trout fisherman. He's a deer hunter. Seems like he should be on our side. And what he says is Governor Evers and the Supreme Court, they killed the program because they don't want us to do these anonymous objections anymore. So it's dead. We're not doing it. And I can't tell you the number of, Wisconsin Wildlife Fed has been in to talk to folks like that, backcountry hunters and anglers. It's not for lack of trying, but sometimes you feel like you're just beating your head against a wall. And you want to say to these folks like, hey, like get out of the building for a minute, get a breath of fresh air, and remember what we're talking about here. Like this isn't just some petty argument inside the Capitol. Like this is our land and water. This is our heritage. This is what our kids are going to inherit that we're talking about. And those conversations get a lot heavier.
In those conversations that you just mentioned, like the gentleman who's an outdoorsman and still is saying no, is there any talk of it being what his constituents want, what his district is like, they're privately owned, everything's good, so we're really not interested? Or is it more him being stubborn? What do you gauge from that conversation?
I never have a legislator try to tell me that their constituents don't like this program because it is just so overwhelmingly popular. What legislators do tell me all the time is, good God, I hear about Knowles-Nelson more than any other issue. And they don't say, oh, I hear about Knowles-Nelson more than any other issue except guns and abortion. They're like, full stop. This is what people are ringing my phone off the hook about. And so there's no argument about whether their constituents want it. That is something that's always agreed on. But what I will say is it also really, really matters that folks are picking up the phone and calling, that they're sending those emails, that they're badgering legislators on their Facebook pages, because ultimately that is what moves the needle. And that's what gets somebody to say, okay, well, I was really pissed off, but like, I'm going to lose my seat if I don't fund this thing. So we better go ahead and do it. So I will say every single time you take 30 seconds to send an email or 60 seconds to make a phone call, it really, really helps.
Well, speaking of Mike Lee and that whole debacle that happened earlier, which it seems like it's a two-headed snake. You chop one off, another one grows back. But yeah. To that end, I know there were certain orgs that had made it really easy for people that may feel uncomfortable or intimidated or just simply confused about, who do I call? What do I say? How do I do it? Where it's like, here's the email template, edit it as you need if you'd like, or let her rip potato chip. Also, here's a number. Go find your elected official based on your zip code where you're at. Here's who you need to call. Also, here's a script if you feel like you need some support in crafting that message. Do you know if there's anything like that for Knowles-Nelson in terms of trying to like apply some of that pressure?
Yeah, for sure there is. And so maybe you can drop a link in the chat, and it's just action.knowlesnelson.org. And it's exactly what you're talking about. There are pre-formatted email messages tailored to legislators. So if you're a senator and you're a Republican, you get one message. If you're a senator and you're a Democrat, you get another message. And it's all based on how those folks have been acting in the Capitol, the positions that they've taken. All a person has to do is punch in their address, and then it matches them with their legislators. They can change the message. They can write whatever they want, or you can just click send and it fires it off. And I will say, tens of thousands of these messages have gone into the Capitol over the course of the last year. The next step is then just picking up the phone and giving them a call. And then, for folks who really want to have a gold medal here, call them up and invite them out onto the land. Say, hey, like, come check out my favorite fishing hole. Come check out the park where my kids go play on Saturday
I'm not going to murder you. It's okay. But I do love how tangible you're making me feel. When I was asking you a day in the life of the Capitol, like, dude, my best days are when I take these people out onto the land.
Yeah.
I was not expecting that as a response. Not any offense to you by any stretch. I just didn't even consider that was something anybody would do. That's like really commendable. Like, good for you.
It would be a totally different argument if this was like 12 different properties within the state, right? Or like something smaller, or, one particular area. Try arguing with that fact that 90% of the, homes within Wisconsin or residences are within a mile of something that Knowles-Nelson has had their hands on. You can't argue with that. No representative can argue that this is like, they have no ground to stand on. We need to beat their doors down digitally and through that phone. So like, anybody who's listening to this, just do it. Like, send it early, send it often, tell your friends to send it out in text messages, put it in your social media. We got to make sure that this doesn't die on this silly hill right here. This is not the one.
Well, a lot of the questions I'm asking are just to like get every bit of this on the table so there's clarity, because what I've learned, and this show has never been politics, and I've done shit rolls downhill, so it comes from me. and there's been none of that, because deer camp's sacred in my mind, and like, just like you don't talk religion and politics at the dinner table, we're not doing that at deer camp. But what I have come to learn, much like we try to dispel and like deflate ego as part of our core mission and value, and how we go about that is through humility and so forth, and self-deprecating humor, blah, blah, blah. But what I've learned through doing all of that is politics are very tightly tied to people's identities. And so I want all these cards on the table so people don't have to worry about their identity being tarnished or whatever they think is going to happen to their identity if they raise their hand this way or raise their hand that way. So I think you've done a really good job of kind of clearing that here to create some breathing room to be like, no, let's dogpile on this. I think someone just made a comment here, Alexander, that we're all team Knowles-Nelson now. Like, if you're in Wisconsin, please take action.
Yes, let's go.
Now, what I'll further ask is, this is a two-part question, just to gain some more clarity and understanding. A, are there other programs like this in other states that we've mirrored or mimicked or like kind of taken some notes from where there's been success elsewhere? Are there other states that have taken notes from our playbook on this? And can folks in other states, do they have any dog in this fight in any way? And can they help us? I'm not sure. Is it only us here that like, no, I live in Oconomowoc, I got to call my legislator. Like, so I'm just curious.
Yeah. So don't forget to call your legislator. That's the most important one right here. Do that after the show. But to your question about, are there other programs like this? So there are. And Knowles-Nelson used to be just the model for the country. People really looked up to what we were doing here in Wisconsin and said, man, you guys are doing something right. And back in, I think it was 2007 was like the high water mark for the program. We funded it at like $90 million a year. So in 2026 dollars, when you're talking real estate and construction, that's like $200 million a year. That's a really significant investment. Since then, we've really fallen behind. We're only putting about a third of that money into the program anymore. And then other states have really supercharged. So Minnesota, they have what they call their legacy fund. Their voters said, let's do, I think it's an eighth of a penny sales tax. And that has enabled them to invest well over $1 billion in the same kinds of things: land conservation, outdoor recreation. Michigan has a similar program going. And then there's some states in the South, as well. Georgia, they do a sales tax on outdoor gear that provides several tens of millions of dollars every year. Florida, not exactly a real progressive bastion, right? What they said was, you know what? Florida panther habitat is super important. We're just going to take $1 billion in tax money and we're going to use it to buy up panther habitat so that they can migrate. Texas is supercharging theirs. They're putting a ton of money into their state park system. And then Colorado, they are acquiring not only rangeland, which is also a really good bird hunting habitat, but then also recreation areas around like all those high development tourist communities in the mountains. So other states have looked at Wisconsin and they said, good idea, guys. And they've taken it and they've really one-upped us. While we've spent, unfortunately, like kind of the last 10 or 15 years kind of fallen backwards. And so I think this is our opportunity to say, no, like this is really important. Don't hit the brakes, like hit the gas. I care about what my kids are going to inherit. So let's do this.
That's awesome. I kind of suspected that would be a bit of the case. And I just wonder, I don't know, in terms of like some of the scripting that you shared for the Take Action page, which I put a QR code together on the screen a minute ago. For some reason, I can't post to Facebook right now. I don't know what broke in the technology, but it is on Instagram, it is on YouTube. Just thinking through, like, could some of that language be helpful? Like, dude, these other states are doing this successfully. What is the problem? Like, can you look around? Like you said, get out of the Capitol building for a minute, breathe some fresh air, touch grass, do what you need to do, and like listen to your people, listen to your constituents that are telling you, we want this.
Yeah, and certainly you can point to, for example, both Minnesota and Michigan, they've got more public land than Wisconsin. Like, that's crazy. Like, we shouldn't let them win that fight. So we've still got some work to do here. And then, you asked about, can people from other states pitch in too? And they can. They can't use that automated form on knowles-nelson.org because you have to have a Wisconsin address for it. But what they can do is they can look up who's the legislator in those places that I go to when I come visit Wisconsin. Does my family go to the North Woods? Do we go hike the Kettle Moraine? Do we hunt in the Driftless? Look up those legislators and say, I come to Wisconsin, I spend money here because I hunt in Wisconsin, and I don't like what you're doing. So get your act together. And that makes total sense, right? Because those are people that are bringing their dollars here to Wisconsin, and that makes a difference.
In my professional world, I got to work on the Ambler Road project in the Brooks Range to make sure that didn't go through. It was quite unique because I helped run the paid campaign for that on Facebook and Instagram, and messaging was really quite ridiculous in that there are two very different audiences, people that would go to the Brooks Range. We call them crunchy granola bar folks versus, the 2A folks. And the messaging had to be very different for those audiences, even though they had a really common shared interest. Are there, and what we did with that was we were trying to get signatures for a petition for TRCP at the time to take to Washington to help lobby. And we hit the goal, which was really quite exciting because there was a lot of work. I mean, that org was born out of literally nowhere. Like, we helped birth it and then brand it, build the site, do all the stuff, run the campaigns. There's a lot of work. So glad to know it wasn't for nothing. Is there anything like that happening here with what you're doing? Are there any paid efforts? Is there any petitioning in addition to calling? Like, where are we? I don't know how some of the political structures and systems work. So I'm just curious, are we doing all that we can do? And again, is it just a matter of like picking up the phones every single day for the next, what is the timestamp on this? When does it come to a head? How much can we really ramp up the pressure between now and what is the date also? I know I've asked 5 questions again.
Yeah.
You like to talk, so we're a good team here.
Well, let's start there and let's work backwards. So, what's the time frame here? We're in full fire drill mode right now. So the assembly has said that they're done for the year. Now, that doesn't have to be true. Like, I don't know about you, it's February 24th. If I told my boss I think I was done working for 2026, I'm not sure it'd work out real well for me. So the assembly can come back to the Capitol at any time and deal with this. The Senate, they've got one more floor day, meaning a day where they're going to be in the Capitol debating bills and voting on them. That's scheduled for March 19th. If the Senate gets it together, passes a decent Knowles-Nelson bill, they can punt it back over to the Assembly. The Assembly can come in, vote on it, and then send it to the governor, and then we're good. If that doesn't happen, June 30th comes, and that's the end of the year for the state financially. They have a fiscal year that ends on June 30th. Then we run out of money, and our next chance to fund it is in the state budget spring of 2027. So the time is now. And that definitely means email incessantly, call every couple of days and ask for a progress report, what's going on, share it with your friends, share it with family. Kind of this is our chance. So then you go to your other questions like, okay, what's happening? And these campaigns, they do cost a lot of money. There's not necessarily a ton of like paid advertising on Facebook or other social media happening, but there are lots of different messages for different audiences. And that is because the program is so broadly popular.
Yeah, which makes it really difficult. Like I understand.
It makes it difficult, and it makes it easy, right? So if you're a mountain biker, you care about this program because you want access to the land and you want money to get out there and build trails, right? So you're working with the Wisconsin Bike Fed and you're working with your local trail builder. If you care about this program, just kind of from a broad sort of habitat and environmental health perspective, you're going to the Sierra Club and they've got a campaign going. And if you care a whole lot about hunting and fishing and access for that, you might come to us, Backcountry Hunters and Anglers, Trout Unlimited, Wisconsin Wildlife Federation. They're all really involved in this. If you care about the nature right outside your back door, you're working with your local land trust. And so us at Team Knowles-Nelson, what we do is we provide all the information. We provide the branding, these cool logos. You can get on there, buy your sweatshirt that folks can run with and they can use kind of however they want. And so if you care about water quality, we have data on that. If you care about access, we have data on that. And it just allows folks to really keep it real, right? So then when they talk to their legislator, they say, this is what I personally really care about. And I think that's been really effective. Now, of course, like if I win the lottery tomorrow, I'm going to blanket the airwaves and I'm going to buy up every TV ad that I can. But unfortunately, we don't have that at our disposal.
That point is actually really, and I'm not trying to tell anybody how to do their job. That's not what this is. But I'm just curious, like, because you touch so many different categories of, like leisure, if you were, or whatever
recreation.
Yeah, like you say mountain biking. So my mind's like, when we were doing the TRCP stuff, quite honestly, like him or hate him, it can be a little bit polarizing. But Steve Ranella was the one that pushed that over the fence. Candidly,
Yeah.
Like he made a post. We got a windfall of signatures come through. We hit our mark, and it wasn't for lack of all the other stuff either. It all played its part. But it was like, whoa, dude had some weight to push around. It was quite impressive. Who in these subculture, communities have the biggest voice in our state? I'm assuming there's probably some. We have the John Muir trails. Like we have mountain biking as a huge recreational sport in this state. Who's the biggest influencer in the state for that? Let's talk about the next one. Who is, and influencers get a bad rap on social in the hunting category a lot of the time. I mean, like we're kind of one. We actually don't even know what to classify ourselves as because we have a fairly decent social following. We have a podcast. It's just kind of like a hot mess. But we're on here doing this because like it's important to us. It finally caught our attention enough to be like, it would be irresponsible for us to not have the conversation to raise awareness because we care about it. So hopefully we inspire others to come on board. We're going to, our cover art that goes into the podcast RSS feed on Spotify and Apple, and then what gets put on YouTube and what gets shared on our socials. Like we're going to do our part in this for how we're talking about it. But I'm assuming there are others that you could go get earned media coverage from pretty easily just because there's passion for it. And who are those voices? And some of these voices have so much sway. I mean, you'd be blown away with how much action they can get their audience to take based on what they're trying to do. So if that hasn't been looked into or that rock hasn't been overturned yet, not you may have already done that, but I would encourage folks to do so there as well.
This is why I'm so happy to be talking to you guys, because you are the influencers and you know who else we should be getting out there and talking to. And I'm a nerd and I spend a lot of my time in the Capitol and a lot of my time talking to reporters. And so, I will say, like, Paul Smith, who writes for the Journal Sentinel and writes about hunting and access, he's talked about this. Pat Durkin, he writes for the Meat Eater. He had a great column on this just a couple of weeks ago. But gosh, there's so much more that we could do to make sure that guides, outfitters, retailers, who really make their living off of this stuff really know about it. And I think there's tons of room to grow.
Agree. Well, this has been really enlightening and informative. And I do see a few folks in the comments. So thank you for jumping in. I'm surprised we didn't have more. I don't know if it's just because people are like me with this topic, like, well, I don't really know yet. I'm just here to listen and learn. Any other final thoughts? Anything else? Like, do you have some shared experiences that you've hunted on some of these properties? Any stories to just share to like lighten it up a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, so I didn't grow up in Wisconsin. My grandparents retired here, so I spent every summer as a kid in the North Woods, and I was the kid who would just get in the canoe and kind of go out and chase the loons around and paddle around and really enjoy being out there by myself. And, one thing that I was thinking about is a few years ago, I took my son hunting with some friends out in the Driftless, and he was probably 5 at the time. And, it was like day one, like I come stumbling back in the house. He wakes up. Did you get anything? No. Day 2, no. Day 3, no. I never even saw a deer while we were out there. But my friend Amy, she got one, and we all got to butcher it together. So my 5-year-old kid, he's staring up at this deer that's just splayed open. It is a circle of life educational moment, right? And then we went inside and we fried up the backstrap. His first time he's ever had venison. He saw exactly where it came from, how it got to his plate. And that got him super excited about learning to fish. So now we trout fish, and he's super excited about eating that. And it just like the whole cycle started again, right? It was like, oh yeah, these are some of the things that I got excited about as a kid. Now I'm doing that with my kiddo. I hope he does the same thing. And we do it all kinds of ways, right? So there's hunting and fishing. We ride bikes, we camp, we hike. And that's why I do this, is because I really care about it. This is why I love Wisconsin.
Yeah. I've been on record saying things like being outdoors and primarily hunting, because it's just how I've always wanted to be outdoors ever since I was a little kid, for no reason other than I felt like I was drawn to it. It's the only thing that I know, short of getting at eye level with my children, who will someday no longer be children. So at some point will be one of the few things that I have that brings out my childlike spirit. It feels like I'm just outside playing. Like, you remember back in the day when you'd be like, you'd literally go knock on the door of the kid down the street, be like, hey, can Derek come out and play? And they'd be like, Derek, your friend's here. And you'd just go out and play. And that's what you would do. And it was super fun.
Yeah.
But not a care in the world. Literally, Derek and I can we go out and play? And we go out in public land and we're just out there.
We're still doing it.
Like we're trying to hang trail cams. It's never about that. It's like, yeah, I don't know. This is it's a presence that doesn't exist elsewhere. So again, the fact that you're taking these people out onto public land to show them, to give them that experience, is one of the best things I think you could do. Hopefully it fucking works at some point, and these people like get some common sense and wits about them. But we'll do what we can based on this episode. I know I'll be getting on the phone tomorrow, sending emails tomorrow, and then thereforth every day until I see some movement. And hopefully we've inspired some of those that are here in Wisconsin that listen to take action. This is a bipartisan issue. This is not, you don't have to worry about getting tied up in your identity around your politics. I don't care about that. If you like going out on public land for one reason or the other, fishing, biking, getting your kids out, morel mushroom hunting, turkey hunting, deer hunting, trapping, small game hunting, I don't care. Shed hunting, all of it. Like, this is something you should take seriously and take action against.
Yeah, and it's not even if you personally enjoy it. If you want, your kids to be able to do it. Like, it's scary to think about just the lapse in funding of a year and going down.
The
like,
compounding
that's
effect
to
of
think
this.
about. Like, I'm freaking nervous just thinking about that. We can't let that happen.
Because once it gets foothold, then this is how it works, man. Like, once it's off the budget, balance, then it's like, well, we're not going to bring it back in. We've been doing it without it for the last 5 years. Now there's no reason to bring it back. Like, it would be an uphill battle more so than it is now. So it's like, yeah, if we lose it now, it's going to probably become a much bigger problem. And then therefore we're not acquiring more easements and land.
And I think we all know we need kids with outdoor time more than ever.
Yeah, I would agree. Anything else we missed here that you feel like we need to make mention of, Charlie?
I think just to let folks know, check out that knowlesnelson.org website. If you send an email through that, then you'll get our updates. We fill folks in on what's going on up at the Capitol. We collect all the news stories about the stewardship program and post those. So it's a really great way to learn and, get engaged often. No matter what happens over the next few weeks at the Capitol, maybe we get the program funded. Hopefully we do. Whether we do or we don't, we're going to be arguing about this again a year from now for the 2027 Wisconsin budget. And that's going to be our chance to say, hey, let's stop bickering and let's just fund this thing for the next decade or the next 2 decades so that all of us can get back to work conserving land and stop arguing up here at the Capitol.
I dig it. Yeah, if this comes back up in a year and you're like, didn't this happen already? Didn't we see this before? Yes. And now we need to put our armor back on, grab our freaking swords and start calling again. Like, let's go.
Yep.
Thank you for your time. I appreciate it. I know it's a lot to ask to have people stay after hours for this kind of stuff, but it means a lot to our community and to us as well. So we appreciate your time very much.
Thank you.
Oh my gosh. Appreciate it. Right back at you guys. This is such a good chance to come and talk. Really. So thank you.
Thank you.